Hey everyone, Ariel Adams here with David Bredin. We do not have Rick today, but we are still doing a BlogtoWatch weekly. Rick is busy doing, what was it, laying a foundation? Is that what it was, David?
Yes, exactly. So best of luck to Rick with that. He's sorry he cannot be here.
He's literally laying a foundation. How often do people actually do that versus use that, you know, in a more literary sense?
It's a little known fact.
He's literally laying a foundation.
Rick is doing that every single week. He thrives on that thing.
No metaphor. He's actually pouring concrete, I imagine. This is great. I mean, a good foundation starts everything, right?
Yeah, exactly. You need to get that right. And Rick is getting it right, so that's why he's not here. Next week he's back.
Hopefully there's going to be like a podcast studio. You know, he has a specialty rural Scotland podcast studio. I'd love to be part of it. And we go out there in the quiet of nature without the distractions of the big city, and we record the best musical podcast we can think of. I'm not a musician, you know that.
Yeah, I think that just rendered the whole thing pointless.
I'm just imagining no, there's all these like amazing British rock bands that would go in the countryside and record an album. I was just trying to riff on that. I don't know what special thing we would do if we had like amazing podcasts. When we come to better insights, I'm just trying to understand what would result out of that deeper focus. You know what I mean?
I think what we'll do is, do as most Scots do and just realize that the weather is terrible, lock ourselves in a shed and invent stuff.
Like watch conversations.
Yeah, converse and invent.
I had a weird daydream today about, again, potential podcasts, because Rick talks about this all the time. He has all these ideas. He has this vision. I have as well for this like network of watch podcasts. And I thought, how do we combine watch love and DJs?
Okay.
And there'd have to be some type of randomizer or some type of thing where a guy or gal like chooses a watch and is like, well, I'm just going to spend the next 5 minutes talking about this. And then I'm going to choose something else seemingly random. Maybe there's themes, I don't know. But just like somebody who is like a watch jockey and it's just like, let's talk about this Hamilton now. Oh, this Urban Jurgensen over here. Just like completely different stuff. Like a playlist almost, like trying to set the mood. I don't know how you curate it a little bit. Maybe like, oh, I got some great chronographs for you tonight. Just to chat about them. It sounds crazy, but eventually we'll come up with a good idea.
The Winamp watch. Just, one conversation.
Winamp watch? Like okay, yeah.
All right, that sounds good.
I mean, we've thought about this a lot. Art on the walls and watches. But anyway, we sell some on the store. Let's talk about some watches first, and then we're going to talk about some trends. So David's going to say either some trends he sees, or we're just going to talk about maybe trends we see. I like the part of the show where we talk about sort of the news and things like that. So we're going to choose some of the articles, mostly focusing on new releases and things like that. Sean has had a bunch of articles lately, and he had one on the TAG Heuer Silverstone. Not going to talk about this too much, but that is a controversial timepiece. And I think this is what makes up a good watch editorial team. There's members of this team that hate that watch and members of this team that love that watch. And I think that that's a good idea that we have both of those types of people on the team. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
The Silverstone has always been a good idea that like was not everyone's idea. It's not bad looking. It's just, it's not always the most exciting and coherent package in the world. And we all have the weird watches we like. I know that for many years, people like have known what my weird watches are that I like, big macho military watches. Sean has his. Do you think, David, that everyone is supposed to have some type of like strange watch design that only they and a few other people are into?
I think once you've spent enough time in the world of watches, then you will discover this weird hidden corner in your soul that drives you to a TAG Heuer Silverstone. And it just, you become attracted to one of these weird watches, and then you can spend the rest of your time trying to explain why it is the greatest thing to have ever existed in the world of watches, and nobody will get you. And then maybe 5 or 8 or 10 years down the road, you will find another guy, at one of these events or something like that, and he might have that watch on, or he might actually know what it is like, or what's so great about it. So it's certainly a possibility for a bond, but it's tough to find.
Well, I think it's interesting when you look at watch collector behavior and personalities, and I think there really is a split between I really couldn't care less if other people like the weird watches I like, versus I have to tell everyone why it's cool. I have to justify it. I have to explain to people, no, there is a reason and why you're wrong for not liking it. I mean, maybe sometimes we vacillate back and forth, but you can clearly see when someone falls in one of these camps, whether like they're ready to fight for what they believe in versus they're like, oh, whatever, man, you're just not going to get it.
Yeah, I think it's a preaching thing. It's you go out there and you hope that you can preach, like why this is so great, and just spread the love. It's not just about, hammering people with the idea that this is the greatest, but more about, hey guys, can you just please see how great this is? I want you to have this amazing thing in your life. And then they look at it and then they don't like it, and then you feel like it's a loss because they can't really see what you're seeing and appreciate what you're appreciating, even though it's clearly there to be appreciated.
You could be right. It could also have something to do with, insecurity and things like that. Like if somebody is disparaging your girlfriend or your taste in art or something like that, like you could just be like, yeah, you don't know. Or you could be like, no, she's awesome, man. Or this is a beautiful painting. Yeah. And I think a little bit has to do with that. But it's, again, as we participate in watch collecting culture, we notice these interesting behaviors and personality traits. And I think a watch like the Heuer Silverstone at an event is going to have that effect. Some guys are going to be like, what is that? Other people are going to be like, wow, someone had the balls to wear that. That is awesome.
Exactly.
Going over to another watch, which is probably in the future going to be just as polarizing, is the Ulysse Nardin Freak 1. I feel like as the Freaks get more advanced, their names get more simple. We used to make fun of Ulysse Nardin for having like insanely long titles. You remember when they used to be like a whole sentence? Now they're so short. I'm like, is that a new name, right?
Yeah. And it is. And it's this Freak 1.
I'm like, it's clearly not the first one. Why is everything which is not the beginning called 1 now?
Yeah, I don't know. It's just justification, I guess.
Okay. It's funny how in the 16 years that I've been doing this now, a lot has changed, but naming conventions and practices and the whole ritual around how products are named or not named for that very well, for that matter, has not changed at all. I'm still waiting for the day where brands call us up and be like, okay, aBlogtoWatch, we just have a product, help us name it. Like, we would do that so enthusiastically, yet and the good thing about the Freak is it was called Freak before anyone at the brand is there now, so they can't change that. But can you imagine what they would call the watch now if they just said, okay, guys, here's the watch, give it a name. What do you think that Ulysse Nardin would come up with?
Well, I like Ulysse Nardin. I think...
It wouldn't be Freak. We know it's not Freak. It would not be. Don't say Shark.
It would be the Ostro Bridge Tourbillon Oscillator Indicator Skeleton Anniversary Tribute.
Oh, okay.
Even on the first generation, it would be an anniversary. But not Ulysse Nardin. Again, I want to give them a pass because they are, they are out there. They are, much more experimentative and brave and courageous when it comes to stuff like this, than some others, let's say in the big groups, for example, especially Richemont. Well,
I can say that the current Ulysse Nardin team has put a amount of refinement and wearability and commerciability to the Freak that really no one has done before that. The company still has not made that many of these watches. It's like just over 5,000 as of the last time I heard. So these are still relatively rare, even though, hey, you know what? I saw one in an airport recently. I saw someone wearing one of the first generations one with the pin still in the sapphire crystal. Can you believe that? I know. So this generation of the managers, Ulysse Nardin, has made this watch, again, about as wearable, useful as you could think. It's smaller than it used to be. It's more elegant. It's legible. It's got the automatic winding system that's called Grinder, which makes me Google every single time.
It's kind of funny. Yes.
I don't know what to call it. It's so hard to give it a good name. I'm still waiting. They literally said, they're like, you know what? Have a name competition on aBlogtoWatch. I'm like, are they going to win a watch? They're like, no. I was like, okay, well, no dice. But it's such a cool product. And I think that they've done such a good job of packaging it now. I mean, if you look at this thing and you ask the price, and you're like, okay, it's $70,000. You could go way worse these days for $70,000, right?
Yeah, I agree, but at the same time, I also want to say that the Freak X, at 27,000 or 25,000, basically almost a third of the price, gives you so much of this experience that it sort of cannibalizes this a little bit.
It has a crown, David.
That's true.
It has a crown. It's not freaky.
I will break the crown off. I don't care. And just put like a little Tipex or something into that little hole and then be done with it. You don't need a crown.
You understand that not having a crown is worth a very well-equipped Honda Accord.
Yeah, brand new one, actually. Maybe two. Yeah.
That crown is a very expensive item to get rid of, and we want to get rid of it.
It's an A4 Audi, basically.
And the other one just has boring, old, efficient automatic winding. It doesn't grind.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure if I could live without grinding. I couldn't say that with a straight.
Don't you want a bit more grinding on your wrist? I mean, come on.
See? Oh my goodness.
But these are the stories that'll cost you at least $30,000.
Yeah, it's a cool story, bro. I would just go with the Freak X for $26,400, which is how much it costs.
I think they do a good job here. Look, I'd like to go and see how these watches are built now. I'd like to make further recommendations. I think that there's more that they can do here. I think this sort of futuristic case design is like one direction. This is very enthusiast. It's very sort of like high design. I think that one of the things that the Freak could really use is a more traditional case. I'll say it. But I think that there's a demographic out there that wants this to be more married to some of that marine chronometer look.
That would be nuts.
That Ulysse Nardin is known for and celebrated for. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I've entertained that idea before a couple of years ago as well. Just when the Freak X came out, and I agree completely. With the marine, it would be very, very cool for sure. They've done
so. Make a boat freak.
Yeah, a boat freak. Do you remember there was this very special Ulysse Nardin that had little ropes that that would just I
think it was like the Grand Deck.
Yeah, the Grand
Deck Tourbillon.
Yeah, that was hundreds of thousands, I believe, but. Very expensive, very, very special. Something along those lines, but freaky. That could be a cool start, but also something very minimalist and dressy, like something from their classical collection. Just put the Freak in it. Obviously, it's a thick movement. I could live with a Freak that was hand-wound. The original was hand-wound. Most of them are still hand-wound. So, if we could lose a couple of millimeters that way, that would be also excellent.
I never want to wear a hand-wound Freak personally.
Really?
You have you lived with one? Do you remember what you had to do?
Yeah, you had to twist the case back.
That fingernail destroying situation.
maybe how about a crown or still no crown?
The least comfortable winding experience, and I've had some really uncomfortable winding experiences.
Yes, yeah, but that was pretty
good
bad.
Thing it's every 8 days or every 7 days or something like that only.
Yeah, and it's not a daily wearer anyway. But yeah, I remember.
You'll be begging to grind. You'll be begging for it. Okay, let's move on now. So I look at a watch, the Welsbro Grape Soda Chronograph. This is a watch that like 5 were made out of. The founder of this brand, or the owner of this brand, it was family brand. The owner of the brand lives here in Los Angeles, and he does a number of things. He also sells watches on eBay, but he has this Welsbro brand that he's trying to grow, and he's done really well with. And this is just like crazy enthusiast watch. It retailed for just under $5,000. The case was made by hand. Like literally someone in Japan was like, I'm just going to, mill this as a one-off thing to house this restored, Valjoux. I think it was like the 72 movement or something like that. And what's amazing about it is just the personality and the color. Like putting these elements together is so oddly satisfying. I don't know if you've seen the packaging. If you go on the website, you see what the packaging is. They have some of the most amazing packaging for this. It's very like pop art inspired. It's like, it's very interesting. It's very, very cool. And to me, it was like they took the luxury watch experience in a completely different direction from a presentation, from a demographic standpoint. Yes, an enthusiast can be into it, but they pulled this into sort of an interesting area of fashion that that I just thought was lovely. And also it kind of coincided with my new interest in purple as being potentially next big color for men's watches. You know, I think most of our career, there was just like never any purples men's watches, really rarely, really rarely. And now it's like a thing now. And I'm like, I dig it. So for me, this is like multiple layers of purple. The strap, they called eggplant, which was just really cool. And I know not everyone loves this, and I think you have to sort of wear it to appreciate it. But I was just curious your perspective on this as a collector.
Yeah, I love this, that it's out there. I also love to go to these websites, and, you know, as you said, you know, I visited the website and I see that it's all sold out. And, you know, I'm always happy when I see stuff like this. You know, handmade case in Japan, really cool Walju old school movement. You could choose a 30-minute or a 45-minute counter, so you could just really get in there and customize it a little bit. As you say, the packaging is very, very cool. The colors are excellent. Purple is coming back big time. You see it in phones, you see it in cars. It's gonna have its moment. It's been missing from watches for quite some time. And, you know, I really do wish that we would see more of it. And it's a much better use of purple than whatever Rolex did with the Oyster Perpetual, for example. And, you know, brands struggle. And, you know, who would have thought that putting red over purple would work? But, you know, with these gray hands, which are also very cool and very rarely seen because they appear to be matte and kind of vintagey in a way, but not, you know, without overdoing it.
They're actually like a lavender color.
Really? Okay. So it's like a faded lavender.
Like the loom is like a lavender colored loom.
Oh, very cool. I love that thing. I'm happy it exists, and I'm even happier that it's sold out. Welsbro, good for you. I've never heard of this brand before. You know, they've done well. I see that their other watches are like $500, $800, which is, you know, a big reach for them to go from like $500 and $880 to $4,880. But they reached there and they made it work through packaging, through clever design. Good stuff.
Yeah, it's a nice thing. And again, it doesn't surprise me at all that all 5 were sold out. But I think that there's a lot of fashion cues here that others can take from. And I also know that pretty much whatever Welsbro decides to do next, it's probably going to be cool. Going to something entirely different. I wish I want to get a chance to check these out myself. But these are some of the latest watches from Tracer. And I want to say, David, I think we might be coming on to the year of the tritium gas tube. Like, between the popularity that Marathon has received very deservedly over the last couple of years, big thanks to us for a lot of the times it's pushing it, Luminox and their new direction, Protec, which is from Barry Cohen that originally founded Luminox, Ball Watches, which isn't doing, and Tracer, which is the in-house brand of MB Microtech. Remember, there's one company in the world that makes these tritium gas tubes, and they're delightful. Most people listening to the show, I imagine, have at least one watch with gas tubes in it. If not, you should get it. It's very, very fun. I mean, they self-illuminate for about 25 years or so, and they just never seem to be as popular with the luxury crowd as I think they needed to be. It of course, has been a challenge to put them into an elegant classic watch. But I do think that, you know, sort of they're hitting a critical mass where just everyone knows they need to have some tritium in their collection now.
A good old tritium. Yeah, I've been to this manufacturer, this factory MB, so that's Mike Bravo, Microtech. If you Google it, I don't think that too many others have been there, so you will definitely, and either way, you will find the aBlogtoWatch.
Yeah, you were very lucky when you were allowed to go. That was amazing.
Yeah, that was very cool. I think I took some really cool pictures as well. You know, that I certainly haven't seen anyone else publish. You can see how they work with this material, how they fill these tiny little gas tubes. Well, yeah, and as you say, one of the challenges when it comes to working these is that what you know people have to imagine these as little tubes, little like the neon lights basically that you have in buildings, for example. It's that, but it's tiny. But still, for a watch, they're very tall. So if you put one of these tubes on a hand, then you have to raise the other hand, like the minute hand, for example, way up high so that it passes over the hour hand and its gas tube. So what you end up with is usually a really tall dial, and that adds to the case thickness or the bezel thickness or something like that. And for example, this Tracer P99 that you're referencing tolerancing and that we covered a couple of days ago hides that thickness. It's 13.7 millimeters, so it's not too bad actually, and it just looks fantastic, honestly. One thing to know is that tritium doesn't really glow that brightly, so it's not like that crazy lume show that you can get from Superluminova. But what is cool is that it never fades. I mean, it has a half-life of something like, I don't know, like 10 years, 10 point something, 12 years. So it's half as bright in a decade or something like that. I hope it's not 20 years, who knows, but it's not thousands of years. It fades over time very slowly. You will not even realize it. And, you can just buy another $500 watch, hopefully 10 years from now.
It's a very interesting point you brought up, because I was actually talking about this with Luminox. Mm-hmm. I remember Luminox, is not the oldest brand. It came out in the 80s.
Yeah.
And only now is Luminox experiencing people having tubes that are going bad and want a replacement. And they never really had a process for it. So they're developing, what do we do? Do we replace the tubes? Do we replace the entire dial? I think they're trying to figure it out now. Maybe by now they have a process. But remember, for years and years and years, this wasn't an issue because nobody had bad tubes. Maybe if it would broke or there was damage or something like that, but the tubes themselves would glow. Now that lifespan is going out. Obviously, they don't want to make it too much of a hassle, and they want to make it practical for themselves. I'd like to revisit that conversation with them in the future to see exactly how they go about mass doing this. But it's a very interesting issue. Tell us a little bit about why it is that MB Microtech is the only company that does this.
Well, it's a very special know-how for one, and for two, you need, imagine the nightmare and all the hoops you have to jump through in Switzerland to be able to deal with something as dangerous as radioactive material. I mean, the testing internally for the employees and the whole thing is just nuts. How do you dispose of waste? How you handle this? How do you store this material? How do you fill this in? How do you guarantee that the whole operation is safe and then the end product is safe as well? And also, how do you create something with the tolerances required for a watch dial? You can imagine it's microns. And the way that they do it, for example, is you have to imagine it's just, stupendously small little tubes that are filled from, that are closed from one end and open from the other so that they can be filled. And then it's like basically a torch that melts the glass and closes it immediately. But that creates all kinds of tolerance issues and all the rest of it. So for the company to be able to manufacture with some sort of consistency to this level of tolerance while working with dangerous materials, I think, that's all kinds of it's the niche of the niche as far as which component manufacturing is concerned.
So is there a preference you have in the brands that, use tritium gas tubes, or is it just they're all pretty good? Because that's almost my philosophy is they all have pluses and minuses, sure, and they're all at slightly different price points. But, and there are other brands that use them aside from the ones we mentioned. But I just think that they each have something to them, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I really like those that have a more liberal use of these little tubes. Some brands like Vostok Europe, for example, installs them vertically. So you have these little tubes that stand up on end along the flange ring or along the periphery of the dial, which is just excellent. I like it when, they use all kinds of different colors. I was there in this room where they filled these little tubes. So the color is basically, I don't want to lie, but it's not luminova, but it's some sort of a material that is a powder that gets basically thrown into these little tubes, and then through some sort of a heating process, it bonds with the inside of the glass, and then the tritium on the inside hits this dust, this colorized dust. And that is what creates this emission of light in a certain type of color. As if I remember correctly, this is 5 or 6 years ago. But I distinctly remember this picture of this lady who was working there. She was standing next to this desk, and she had this pile of this colorized dust, and she was just dumping it into these little gas tubes and just emptying them out. And somehow the whole thing would stick. And, the end result is still, nevertheless, super even, super high quality. And it's a very manual process at the same time. So, although a lot of it is, of course, machine them because it's dangerous materials and different tolerances and all the rest. You can also see how there are certain elements to this that cannot be automated. And so it's basically, in a sense, a handmade product. And that is also a very cool element to this.
Okay, so I thought for a long time that a really cool gift would be like even like a free gift at a brand or like just a corporate gift or something like that. It's just like a tritium gas tube, but it's so small. How would you give that to somebody?
I have, this is how I did it, and I have one for myself too. It's a little keychain, and you have it in a tiny little tube, and because it glows all the time, you can find your key at any time, basically. And it's very cool because it's like a little capsule of sorts, and you see the little tube in there, you can take a good look at it, and it's just one of the coolest things, really. So make it useful, just whatever it is that you want to find at all times, a little tube that glows at all times and you need not charge is a good way to do that.
I like to remind people as well that there's a legal limit to how much they can use before there's potentially too much radiation exposure. I know. Our fragile DNA and all.
Yeah.
But people are like, oh, why don't they just shove a bunch more on there? I'm like, well, they would, but
you can't.
There's things that contend with. So we call this a safe level of radiation, and it is very safe for basically unlimited exposure at these amounts.
Yes. Still
not available in France, unfortunately. Moving on.
Once you look at the dials, you will see that it's like T25 or T smaller than 25, and that's the amount. However, that is
T100. That's the max.
Is it T100 now? Okay.
Yeah, T100 in America. In France, it's T0.
It's T0. It has to be less than 0. Whatever the opposite of radiation is, and probably I should know, but it's that's what you get.
Holy water.
It's a black hole, basically. It just sucks light out. The half-life of tritium actually is 12.36 years. Much less than the 1600 years of radium, which ended in a way
super bad
for you. And again, and people used to ask, and it used to be a concern that how will you absorb some sort of radiation and stuff. And if I remember correctly, it's so basically, okay, I found it. It says, I just want to read this because I think it's fascinating. The radioactivity of tritium is so weak that it can be stopped by a 5 millimeter thick plexiglass. And even if you were to consume all the tritium in your watch at once, that would account for the same amount of radioactivity, which is 40 microsieverts, as you were exposed to when flying from New York to LA. So you could technically eat your watch dial and still get away with it, which is not something that we suggest that you don't do that. But it's
don't do that, please.
Ever.
Now the teenagers on YouTube, David. What are your costs?
God, yeah, we have to ask Rick to cut this out. But still, don't do.
It's gonna be worse than Tide or whatever.
Oh my God, yes. Yeah. So once your intestines glow in the dark, that's bad. Don't eat watch dials. Yeah, it's not fun. But I found the article and it's very cool. So check it out. It's titled "How Glow-in-the-Dark Tritium Gas Tubes Are Made" at MB Microtech.
Yeah, we're one of the only ones that have an article about that, as far as I know.
Yeah, exactly.
Hi, I'm Ariel Adams, founder of aBlogtoWatch, with a message from eBay, a platform I probably use daily. Make sure your watches are the real deal with eBay Authenticity Guarantee. I believe it's the first and best service of its kind that protects your luxury purchases and checks each watch individually at eBay's highly reputable authentication partner, Stolen Company, in the United States. From band to bezel, their authenticators ensure each wristwatch matches the eBay listing and is the real deal. Authenticity Guarantee is also very fast. Once authentication is complete, your watch is securely delivered via rapid 2-day shipping. Surprisingly, eBay's Authenticity Guarantee service is free for all watches priced $2,000 and up. No one should buy a luxury item without an Authenticity Guarantee. Do what I do and check eBay before each watch purchase, because everyone deserves real. A new release from Glashütte Original version of their Senator. We're just calling it the Senator Chronometer Silver and Blue. Wow, I wish it had a better name than that, but it is very, very lovely. I do think that silver and blue is a great combination. We don't see quite enough of it, and so this is a combination of colors that literally I was imagining in my mind for a while. this is a rare situation where Glashütte Original takes essentially an existing watch and like further refines it. It looks like the case is thinner now. Interesting kind of new bezel design. These interesting applied Roman numerals on the dial. I hate, I hate to like complain that it's sort of like re-releasing a watch already, but this feels new enough. Like this is a slick looking watch. I haven't seen this in person, but this looks nice, doesn't it?
Oh, it looks very nice. And these are super legible. The way that, Glashütte Original works with textures, this dial and with these hands and indices, it's going to be beautifully legible. I've been to the Glashütte Original manufacturer, which is in obviously Glashütte, but I've also been to their dial manufacturer, which is in Pforzheim. And if I remember correctly, the case manufacturer is not theirs, but it's also in the same building as their dial manufacturer in Pforzheim, Germany. And the tolerances and the way with which they make these cases is so unbelievably German, if we can say that. It's unreal. You can tell that this is not a Swiss case. And this is not to say that Swiss cases are bad. They are amazing. But these watches are thoroughly German. And Lange, for example, I absolutely adore Lange as much as I do GO. But, Lange has Swiss dials. I believe Swiss cases. I'm not sure about that, but I'm pretty sure, And here you have a wholly German watch as far as, you can go with that. And it shows. I think it's just the whole package. It's white gold. It's supposed to be, and it's priced at 32,300. So it's expensive, but still like a good 10 grand less than a day-date or something like that.
I wasn't shocked by the price.
It's not,
especially knowing it was white gold. I wasn't shocked by the price.
Yeah, and what you have to know is that these are like properly hand finished. The whole thing, like mirror polished on the ratchet wheel. And all kinds of other components.
These are still a good value. It honestly feels like a budget Lange in like not a bad way.
In a totally not a bad way. Yeah, and the proportions are bang on this watch as well. Not all GOs, but this one is just nice to look at from a proportions perspective as well.
And if you've ever played with this movement, you'll smile because it says chronometer, and it's a chronometer in a way that Swiss chronometers are not chronometers. We're not going to get into the movement right now because that's a whole other discussion, and I actually look forward to reviewing one of these. But
it's good that you mentioned it because I think what you might remember, or, like subconsciously from this movement when you played with it, is that once you pull the crown out, it zero resets the sub-seconds. Which is one thing. Yeah. But then, and this is the most German thing ever, the minute hand jumps. So the minute hand is always on the marker. So once you press the crown in...
Yeah, when you turn the crown, that is.
Exactly. Not when the watch is in operation, but when you are setting the time. So you can actually synchronize this to anything you want, and it will be OCD friendly. The minute hand will start at the beginning of the minute.
So if you're the type of person who's just like, I can't wait to like unscrew my crown and set the time... This will make you smile more than anything. Just about anything else out there.
Yeah. In terms of feel, the quality feel and the clickiness, the only thing that comes close is, in this price point is the Sky Dweller with the ring comment bezel. That's super clicky, super satisfying.
Yeah, but that's a totally different thing, and that's not setting the time. Setting the time is just as wishy-washy. Basically, like, when you set the time, you know that you're not really sure where in the minute you're setting it. Like, you just know this, and you're just like, it's going to be fine.
I use a loop.
But, like, if you're a real chronometer nerd, that's not enough. With this watch... You know exactly what minute you're starting at, where the hands are going to be. You said the seconds hand resets, zeroes out. I mean, this is like... And then you have the power reserves. You know exactly. I mean, this is like... You said the right word, OCD. You are... For the control freak. For the very Teutonic-minded control freak. This is really like the ultimate watch.
This is the American Psycho watch. And it's good to know that the movement undergoes a 15-day test conducted by the independent Thuringian Office of Weights and Measures.
What is that, like something from Star Trek?
Yeah. I mean, Thuringia is like, how do you call it? It's like, not not a county, but like a segment of the country. And then the Thuringian Office of Weights and Measures, which is of course completely independent because it's German and it has to be done right. They conduct a 15-day test on the movement. Imagine when Chio rung them up and they were like, "Hey, you guys, you do the weights and measures and stuff."
All for just 32,300 USD.
Holy crap! I mean, it's a good offer, honestly. You can't. How do you go? Where do you go from here? Really? Maybe a gold bracelet.
No, it's. I mean, honestly, like we're laughing about it, but the Senator is not new. Glashütte Original has been producing watches like this for a while. This case is brand new. It's thinner, so it's going to wear differently. But this is just not a series which is brought up in conversation that often. You don't have people like that nerd out about it. We've even talked about other things like the Mont Blanc, the Reset chronographs that have their own like multi-generation thing that are kind of nerdy and cool in its own way. Like people just don't talk about the things. They will eventually. And then we won't get excited by it because we'll be like, yeah, we ordered that like a while ago. Yeah. Is this a limited edition? Or I don't think it is.
I'm not sure, but it couldn't help but remind me. And again, this might need to be cut out, but it's like there was a South Park episode where they had to go to the European fecal standards and measurements in Zurich, which is this really overkill building, this huge building with a Swiss flag on top for the European fecal standards and measurements.
See, we knew it's a cartoon because nothing in Switzerland is over the top anymore.
No.
It's very small.
Yeah.
But there are buildings with many flags.
Oh yeah. This is not a limited edition as far as I know. It's a fantastic watch, beautiful dial, and some other iterations also exist. So, people are welcome to browse the Glashütte Original website.
Next watch is an interesting and unexpected timepiece from Swatch. This is their take on the square watch, which according to them was a concept that never really made it to market. But now that, they're just remaking old watches, why not? Mm-hmm. And what was the issue of this one? It had like no water resistance. Was that the problem?
I'm really not sure. It was like 20 meters.
Yeah, that's okay. That's, and the reason I'm guessing is because of the square crystal. We know the crystal's plastic, of course, but to mount a square crystal and create the same level of water resistance is much more challenging than a round one. More expensive watches will use special techniques, and because sapphire is harder, you can do better things with it. I'm guessing that's just the reason. There's just, I don't know if they had the right gaskets, bezels, glues. I don't know how much R&D they were supposed to put into it. Do they need a diving version?
I'm not sure. It doesn't look like a watch I would feel comfortable diving with at all. It looks so fragile.
It looks like it would fill up like a small fish tank full of water.
Actually, yes. Just wait. They will do it. It's cool. I mean, there are different colors.
They should have a bubble in there already.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Why do you think Swatch is interested in this design right now? And how do you explain the case back? Because the battery compartment lid confuses me.
It's, for some reason, they were like, okay, so this is a square watch, but we have to put a round one on there. So the battery cover is, it just has a Swatch dial. Yeah, a perfectly rounded Swatch dial that says 1st of March, 10, and 30 seconds. I don't know. That looks odd at best. I'm not sure what the point of that exercise was, but it's a funky little detail. It's $110 too, so it's really cheap, but it's probably cheaply made too.
Yeah, we know that Swatch is not a luxury brand, and so I think that's sometimes people now speak about Swatch watches in reverence. Really, it's a Swatch, okay? It's gonna feel like a plastic watch because that's what it is. Really, there's like no one other than Swatch that really gets away with like a full-on plastic watch, and that can be in the same category as other luxury watches. So it's good, but it's actually expensive for what it is. And I think that people need to just sort of understand it more. Swatch Group has always been a catapult to be like, oh, you like watches now? Well, buy something fancier from one of these other brands. It's water resistant or made of metal or, something like that. That's sort of always been the point. It's a feeder, and it's just sort of there for the general public. So I think the people at Swatch are also kind of rub their heads and they'd be like, well, then buy a Hamilton, a Certina will do great for you, right?
Yeah. I'm just browsing the Swatch website and it's just down the rabbit hole, and they have a watch that's called Swatch Blinded by Neon.
Is it blinded by neon?
That's exactly what it's called. It's the official name of the watch.
But is it though? Like, does it match the name?
No. I mean, it's quite neon, but there are other ones that are called Neon to the Max. And those are the actually blinding watches with all the textures and colors and stuff. Here's the thing, like, I really like a lot of Swatch designs, but I would love for them to be better made. I would be willing to pay like $500 or even $800 and just make them like nice. Because one of the issues I have, and it actually happened with me a few times, I went into this like Swatch store and found this watch and it looked fantastic and I put it on and it's so disappointingly bad in the way that it feels. I'm like, it's the only watch I'm going to wear that day. Probably. I don't want to have something this cheap. It's just letdown.
You shouldn't be wearing that. You're a watch enthusiast who's worn some of the finest timepieces on earth.
Thank God.
Of course it's going to be basic to you.
It's not the basicness. It's
What do you want this to be? A Casio?
Yeah, I want it to be like maybe 4 times more expensive and 4 times better made. I'm not saying they should stop doing whatever they are doing because they are doing a huge service to the industry because,
Okay, this is basically what David's saying. Yeah. Cheap watches have never looked better. Yes. And it's true.
Okay, that's a good way.
Like, Swatch has made the cheap, crappy watch that you really don't want to wear almost wearable. And then you put it on, you're like, oh my God, this is exactly what I was trying to get away from when I wanted to go to enthusiast watches. For me, it's the ticking.
But now I'm coming full circle and I'm looking at this Neon to the Max and I'm like, well, this is kind of cool.
So the designs are so cool. So you know what you need.
I know.
You know what you need, right? You need Grand Swatch.
Grand Swatch.
Yeah.
Swatch
That's
looks.
What you need.
Grand Swatch. Oh my God! If that ever came to be, I would be the happiest person in the world. That would be hysterical. Maybe one day. I think this is a high point for us to end on because Rick will still have to edit this, and it will take him a fair bit of time. Ariel, a final watch to end with, or final thoughts?
Okay, so we're gonna end the show today talking about a watch that neither of us saw or reviewed, but it was reviewed by Mike from the team, and it is the Etienne T02 with a Flink enamel dial. Now, one of the things that we've seen over the past couple of years is the democratization of enamel techniques. Many of them are not so difficult to do. They are artisan, but they're not difficult in the sense that you have to be like an artist who micro paints and things like that, like Champlive or the various types of artistic enamels. Yeah. Super hard. But if you create a texture and then you paint it with a color that has translucence, it is both beautiful and relatively straightforward how to do and repeat. And we're seeing a lot of that now. And here's a brand, Etienne, that does it. And they do it okay. I haven't even looked at the price yet. I'm hoping this is not a particularly expensive watch.
$14.50.
$14.50.
Yeah.
That's a bit much. I like this thing, but I was thinking a few $100.
Really?
Well, look, it's this hand wound, very basic movement. The case is nothing remarkable. A handset and the dial is fine. I mean, am I not being generous enough here? I mean, I would expect a much more refined dial case, and sophisticated movement for this price point. I mean, at this price point, this is basically the price point of like a Zodiac Super Seawolf, which is honestly a hell of a lot more watch than this.
Yeah, I think Mike took some beautiful pictures of this watch. Because I was just going to say that I've not seen this hands on. Yeah, I mean, taking a closer look would lead me to believe that would help me settle on whether this is how we're priced or how not. A bit further refinement in terms of the dial, maybe the Arabic numerals and stuff. Who knows? I mean, it's been so unbelievably competitive, this market, between like $500 and $1,500 that we've seen huge fluctuations, and you can make amazing purchases here and there. This feels like a watch that who knows what sort of component cost this particular brand got over others. And
I'm not saying they're charging too much in terms of they're getting too much revenue. I'm simply saying as you said, extremely competitive place.
Yes.
And with that handset.
Yeah, exactly. I kind of like this one. I think
it's mostly good. It's mostly
good. If it was like, just under $1,000 or something like that, who knows? But I think it's, people will look at this, imagine if someone has not spent as much time with watches and in the world of watches as we have, and they look at this, and who could tell that this is not a $5,000 watch or an $8,000 watch if you're just getting into watches. And let's say your brain is already fried from all the different watches that you see that are super generic. This looks different. You hear the word enamel. You want something classy looking. It's 39 millimeters. It's like a nice size. It's just 8 millimeters thick. So it's actually a dressy watch. And you're like, okay, well, you know what? I'm not going to be the 10,000th guy on the street with a PRX. I would just reach for this. Why not? But, this is not to say that I'm trying to justify a price that is too high. It could, always go lower for sure.
I just don't want to ask someone to check out my Flinke.
Check out my Flinke. You'll be arrested in some countries for that.
Look, I mean, it is still true that there's not a lot of stuff at this price level with this style. I'm saying that I anticipate there will be.
Yes.
I mean, if there's any trend, and you sort of want to talk about trends, so we can end on this trend, it's sort of putting more artistic techniques into dials that are not too expensive.
Yeah.
The reason that most of these were in very expensive watches traditionally is there was very, very few people making these dials, and therefore the luxury companies could have a monopoly on the manufacturers. Now that it's known that there's a market for hand-painted dials or this type of, guilloche with a translucent enamel over it, more people are going to experiment, see if they can make it, and we're having more artisanal processes out there of doing things like making watch dials in hands, which is honestly more valuable than making movements. It's harder to get good hands and dials than it is to get good movements. And there should be more people trying to specialize it. They can do it from various parts of the world. Yes, it's going to take the right machines and technique, but there is clearly value in it because people want to spend a few $100 to a few $1,000s, not much more, but have a real art watch experience. And so I think that hopefully there's going to be more of a market for this, and this Etienne brand is on that. David, what are your thoughts and your anticipations about this sort of $1,000 to $2,000 art dial market in the next few years?
Oh, it's just going to get stronger and stronger. This year, sadly, I'm not making it to the Hong Kong Watch and Clock Fair, maybe next year, but I've been there like 5 or 6 times. I've seen, I think the first one I went was like 2015 or something like that, quite a long time ago. And even at that time, there are hundreds, if not thousands of different exhibitors, and they are suppliers to the watch industry. And yes, the Swiss one as well. And you can see that, there's all kinds of fields of expertise and specialization. It's not as vertically integrated as, some of the big groups and manufacturers that we are used to reading about and learning about from the Swiss watch industry. No, these are like small specialized workshops and ateliers and maybe smaller factories. And if people can lean into that, then sure. I mean, that's one way to keep the prices relatively low. And you can go all artsy with that. And also I was shocked. I was at one of these famous enamel dial manufacturers in Switzerland, and I'm not going to say who it was because I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say whatever they told me that I'm saying next. But they said that they throw 9 out of 10 enamel dials out. Which means that because they just crack, in the furnace or something like that, or they are imperfect. So imagine how much room there is for improvement and how that could affect potentially the price and the cost of these components. If you can afford to throw 9 out of 10 out at what is essentially not the final, but one of the later steps, in the sense that you are firing the enamel and it's just not perfect. So at a time, I'm not even sure what other factory or supplier in the watch industry works with a 90% reject rate, but some enamel factories, and we're talking about white, clean, standard enamel dials, appear to be doing that. So room for improvement there.
So the next big thing that you have going on is going to Geneva Watch Days. Yes. We already know that you're not really sure what you're going to see, but there's going to be a lot of news after the fact. So everyone can anticipate a lot of new watch releases. We think that the market right now, at least in my anticipation, is still highly prolific with watch models, meaning lots of different variety, lots of watches, not necessarily a huge amount of volume of each. Yeah. I don't think it's a winning strategy for the long run, but I think for the time being, and maybe you'll disagree, we're going to see lots of small batches of variety because that's what the market thinks, or that's what the industry thinks the market wants.
Yeah, I mean, it's one clear direction, which is integrated still bracelet sports watches in all kinds of, in every segment of the market. That's one thing. And all the rest is just like people in the dark, like trying to get a feel for something. That's the trend today. We'll see where that goes. As you say, I'm liking this sort of diversity and versatility that comes from this frequency of like smaller batch productions here and there. I look forward. I don't even know how many meetings I have. I still have a bunch of appointments up in the air. My calendar is already sort of kind of full. It's going to be a busy week, lots of pictures, lots of meetings, and it's just a cool event. I'm happy that there's such a thing as Geneva Watch Days.
Lots of cheese and espresso.
I will skip on the cheese, but
I'm jealous of the cheese.
Really?
Usually it's very fine cheese.
I will ask for the finest cheese in the Borivas. Just
that. Come on. I mean, I know you live in Europe and you buy. Generally speaking, you have finer cheese than in America, but when we're served cheese, it's usually good cheese.
Yeah, I just want the beer to go with it. It's never enough.
No, there's never any beer. Yeah. It's rare, once in a while.
Yeah. So, anyway.
The guys always jump on it. Anytime anybody offers alcohol, they're like, yes.
Yes. Yeah. Is it past noon? Okay, great.
I'm excited for I like the dried fruit and nuts.
Yeah.
If they have juice, I'm very happy. If it's a cappuccino, like they have real milk or something like that, or cream, that's great because the espresso is very strong. But that's all I want. You guys want cold beer, which I can totally understand.
Yeah. So I'm gonna fling for that. Catch you guys next week. I'm not even sure if I can record next time, but we'll work it out. We'll see how it goes. We hope that
maybe Rick's foundation will be done by then, and then we could
he will have
get back to the old way of doing things at aBlogtoWatch Weekly. Thank you everyone for listening to the show.
Thanks everyone. Catch you next week. Bye bye.